Hi. Thank you, Dave Stetzer. We are here with Dave Stetzer on Go Beyond Summit for our EMF radiation and our electricity pollution summit. So, Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Dave is one of the legends in this space as far as creating one of the most incredible meter devices to measure the dirty electricity in your home. And he is an expert in electricity. And so I'm just going to turn over to him because you're going to want to hear everything that this gentleman has to say. He's an expert in it. He has a suite of products that can harmonize the house or like clear the house, whatever word you use best. But he has filters in it and meters and sheaths that can block and redirect smart meter radio frequency target. So unbelievable company that he's developed and created with his brilliant mind. So Dave, let's start with talking about the frequencies and specifically when we're measuring, like I have a Gauss meter and that measures at like 60 waves per second. And that measures electricity, and 1 on that scale or below 1 is the safe levels for electricity in our home. And then we have an acoustometer that meters the microwaves and such, and basically anything 30 microwatts per meter squared and above is challenging for, well, it's known to cause DNA challenges for adults, and then 10 below 10 for children. And then you're talking about, let's see, kilowatts, and anything 2 kilowatts or between 4 and 100 are really polarizing for the body. Please start with us and explain the difference in how we combine in this metric system and how it makes sense for everybody.
Okay, the Gauss meter, first of all, measures the strength of a magnetic field and how strong is it. But we have to know the frequency of that field.
Right.
And the Gauss meter usually only looks at the 60 hertz part. And so there's all kinds of studies out there that says that the 60 hertz causes problems, but none of them are conclusive. Okay, but yet people become sick when they're exposed to it. So it's sort of like I use an analogy of going to Mexico and drinking the water, and if somebody's drinking the water in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, and they don't get sick, but every time you drink water in Mexico, you get sick. So the argument can go on forever. Okay, so there's never going to be a conclusive, anything going to come out that's conclusive that yes, it does make you sick, no, it doesn't. Okay,
right.
But we need to, if we go to Mexico now, let's separate the water. And we say, okay, let's take the water out of the glass and see what's left over. Well, in Mexico, we have all this bacteria. That makes you ill. It wasn't the water that made you ill. It's the bacteria in the water that makes you ill. Now, when we look at the 60 cycle, the 60 cycle doesn't really make you ill, in my opinion. But what's riding on top of the 60 cycle, like this bacteria, that will make you ill. Now, Gauss meters don't measure that, what the bacteria part, the part that makes you sick. And they say, well, this is safe, this is safe. I defer to Dr. Neil Cherry, who said the safe level is 0. So we'll say safe level is 0, okay? So that we're protected, okay? But so I don't really know what levels make you ill and what doesn't. But I do know we've been to Russia, and I've been to all over the world, actually, and met with scientists. And actually, the Russians actually made weapons with this stuff. Wow. So what happens is the most biologically active frequencies are between 4 kilohertz and 100 kilohertz. Now, the stuff that's going to come with your acoustometer, that doesn't measure those frequencies either. That's measuring something coming through space in the kilohertz, gigahertz, something like that range. There's cell phone radiation, the deck phones, the Wi-Fi, those things. You have to use your acoustometer, or I like an HF35C or something like that, because it has a directional antenna on it and you can find the source. So going back then, is the most biologically active frequencies are between the 4 kilohertz and 100 kilohertz. And that's like where our filters we developed. Because when we went to Russia, they said, these are the ones that are the most biologically active. So those are the ones we targeted. And where are you being exposed to it from? On the ground in North America, we put, it's a tremendous amount of current in the ground. The earth is actually a conductor. And the electric utilities, rather than putting up a bigger neutral wire or something, choose to use most of the earth as a return path to their substation. So in 1998, there were 2 studies done, one by EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute out of Palo Alto, California, and one by the Minnesota Science Advisors. They found that 70% of all the current that goes out on those phase wires, the hot wires, returns to the substation via the earth. Well, the problem is where your power line or your water pipes, for example. So if you touch a sink, washing your dishes, ground plug, anything like that has power on it. It has voltage and it has current. So that's one source that you're exposed to, that 4 to 100 kilohertz. The other is what's on your line itself, on the wires in your home. And again, I don't want to pick on Dell computers, but Dell computers, the towers put 16.6 kilohertz back on the line. Well, that's right in that bracket. Compact fluorescent lights, the CFLs, but between 50 kilohertz and 100 kilohertz. That's right in that biologically active range.
Mm-hmm.
Apple, 12.5 kilohertz.
Wow.
Dell, the new laptop computers, most of those will put 50 kilohertz back on all the wires. So you see, and we're looking at 63 kilohertz for these new LED lights and 43 kilohertz from LED lights. Well, it gets on every wire, and when it's on those wires, it goes ahead, and those are the frequencies that capacitively couple into your body. So you could have actually like a compact fluorescent light down at the end of your driveway on some light, and when you're sleeping at night, you have 50 kilohertz on that wire right beside you in the bedroom. So that's what makes you sick. Now, when we developed this filter, because then we say, okay, and I say we, I'm talking about, and I'd like to take the credit for everything, but Professor Emeritus from UC Berkeley, Martin Graham, that's the Graham part of the Graham-Stetzer, and he, you know, he's passed on now, but he was the driving force. Yes.
Yeah, his name's on your.
Yeah. He has over 40 patents to his name. So him and I were partners, and we did all this research. And so we needed to target the 4 to 100 kilohertz, and that's what we did. And the filter, we made a filter that takes this out. So there's all kinds of studies that were neurotransmitters change within 8 hours, blood sugar changes within 20 minutes to an hour after you clean up your electrical environment.
Wow.
37 kids had asthma at a school. We put these filters in. They no longer use their inhalers, and they took it to the days that we put it right in. So we know that these are really working. And the meter that we use, you can use an oscilloscope, because you can actually see it. But that's like maybe $5,000. So we needed to do something so you can see it, the average person. And we don't need to make people into electrical engineers. So we made a very inexpensive meter. There isn't even an on and off button, so it's real simple. You just plug it in and you get a number. And what it does, the number is the amount of energy, high frequency energy that's there. It takes out that 60 cycle because we don't care about that. It doesn't go internal to the human body, but the high frequency stuff does. And so we want to have that number, and it's been used in research and published in peer-reviewed medical journals. We know that if the number is above 2,000 in one study, and you work in that environment for 6 hours a day for 180 days a year, and the reason they come up with those numbers is because they did it at a school, and teacher contracts are that in California. So what happened is you've increased your chances of getting cancer by 25%.
Wow.
If the number is above 1,000, you've increased your chances of getting cancer by 15%. Now, of course, you could automatically assume that if we can get the number down to, say, 50 or 100, the odds of getting cancer from that would be like slim to none. So the number means something.
Definitely.
Used in research, and we can show you exactly what we're talking about. I can pop it up on the screen if you want. I'll try this here. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the blue wave, this is an oscilloscope trace. And the blue wave is one cycle of the 60. So we're looking at 1/60th of a second here. So then the red, now, we took out the 60 cycle through a special filter. And we take out the 60 cycle, there should be nothing left over. We drain the water of glass, or I mean a glass of water. If we drain the water out of the glass, there should be nothing left over. Well, there is something left over. This is the bacteria. And you can see there's like 25 kilohertz here. And that's right in that range, okay? So there's no filters or anything being used here, but you can actually see this, what we're talking about. Now the meter that we've developed doesn't measure the 60 cycle. It only measures the dirty electricity, if that's what you want to call it, that what would we see in red, and it gives you a number. And in this case, the number was 213. Okay, that should answer the question, huh?
Yeah, definitely. That's fantastic. And so give us a little background on the different levels of exposure in different countries. Like how different, is it in Russia compared to the US with our thermal effect, stating that that's when, it hurts us.
Okay, now we're talking about another type of what's coming through space. Okay, that would be your power density, or like cell phones, deck phones, something like that. So now Wi-Fi, things like that. Okay, well, in Russia, and it's something called radio wave sickness. You can look it up on the internet. The Russians, at the end of World War II, radar was developed. What happened is the Russians noticed that people who worked with radar and transmitters and receivers were having problems, health problems, like flu-like symptoms that didn't break out, memory loss, headaches, nausea, different set of symptoms, okay? So what happened is they came to the United States, a team of scientists, and they said, hey, look, we should probably put develop some standards here so that people can go ahead and not get sick from this.
Right.
And of course, that was at the end of World War II, beginning of the Cold War. So they told the Russian scientists, look, you're from a third world country, go back to your country, okay? And so they didn't, they did. They went back and they actually made weapons with this stuff. Now, fast forward here in the US, when they started noticing, hey, those guys were right, what they did is they did research and they come up with this number of, but the criteria, they kind of cheated on the criteria. Like when the Russians did it, and said, okay, look, the guy got headaches at this level, eye pressure at this level, nausea at this level, different things, okay? This radio wave sickness, these symptoms. The Americans, what they did is they said, okay, when the cells start to heat, that's when we know it's safe or no longer safe.
No longer safe, yeah.
So just the heating of the cells. So, I mean, the person's hair could fall out, but we're still safe, internal bleeding, all these things. It could have all these symptoms, but it didn't count.
Yeah, rashes, massive vibrating headaches.
Absolutely.
Bloody nose.
DNA, neurotransmitters, not, functioning anymore, coming out of your body, which you need for your immune system. All these things, an immune system failure is one of the things, right? Altered blood sugar. Altered blood sugar. Now, since and Millam did this research, Sam Millam, who was a professor of medicine, and he's a world famous epidemiologist, and he wrote a book called The Electrification of America. And he noticed that the blacks in the South were the last to get electric. The rural electric corps came through. They were the last to get electricity, but their diabetic rate was lower than anybody else.
Wow.
Now they have just as much chance of getting diabetes as anybody else after the power lines came in, after the power lines in New York came in. And France, Paris and London and New York were the first cities to be electrified. The cancer rate shot way up. That's the only thing that changed. And
Now,
so,
did you know Sam Milham, Dr. Milham?
do I know him? Oh, yes. I talk to him just about every day.
So did he use your meters? And I mean, I read his book, I believe, on the dirty electricity. Did he use your meters and one of the cases that they used in La Quinta?
Yes, our meter was the one that was used. That number, our meter looks at the amplitude of that dirty power, how high does it go up, and it looks at how close they are together, the frequency. Other meters that people have been trying to make knockoffs, but we have a patent on the meters, so that they do is they still use our front end. It takes out that 60 cycle, but they're measuring just the amplitude. It means nothing, because if there's a German physicist, his name was Maxwell Planck. He said energy is proportionate to frequency. It's Planck's law. So if you could have low amplitude, but if they're squished closer together, high frequency, you have all kinds of energy there. So our meter measures the energy that's there. It's like 6 pages of calculus. You can take that waveform like we did, and we can come up with 6 pages of calculus, and we can come out with some number for energy. But, this little thing here takes care of the calculus for you. Just plug it in, and it'll tell you this number. And that's what Milham did. Professor Magda Hollis from Trent University in Canada has done all kinds of research on it. Dr. Stephen Genesis has done all kinds of research with these filters and these frequencies in the meters. And all the research, there's no other research been done with anybody else's meters or anything, because it doesn't correlate. Ours will correlate with blood sugar, and that's a number. So maybe the Dalai Lama can change his blood sugar psychosomatically, but I can't, neither can you. But when we cleaned up people's electrical environment, nobody had less than a 52% reduction in insulin usage. So it's affecting blood sugar. But again, going back to, what's these meters and what's coming through space, the criteria, person could become diabetic, could do all these things. But in the US, I'm not a conspiracy freak, but somewhere along the line, that heating of the cell, that was like way far out, and everything else is safe. There's some corruption there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Well, his book was unbelievable. I mean, he literally talked about La Quinta School District, where the teachers were getting cancer. The professors their males were getting more breast cancer, and it was all dirty electricity. And then they had to clear and rewire the whole school. And it was just this hot pocket from that chaos. So just unbelievable. But there's countless stories of people getting sick, and you don't even know it. When you move into a new home or a home, you're just looking at this home, but what's going on behind the walls and behind the scenes, whether it's bad wiring or the wiring that you have zero control of, like you mentioned before, you really need to address those challenges and get that, into the low, hundreds, as low as possible.
The bad wiring, that kind of gets a bad name. There's people out there that, their wiring errors have to be corrected or something. Well, first of all, they're using something that's, when you share a neutral, it's not a wiring error. An error infers there's something wrong, okay? It's not against the electrical code or anything like that. And most all the houses that I've come, in contact with or something, there's not wiring errors anymore. There's inspectors, everything's done so now, with so much scrutiny, that the house is really safe as far as the wiring. But it's not only you. There's two sources where this stuff comes from. Like I'm talking about the dirty power now. What you put on from your equipment. If you moved into the house and you bring in your TV and your puts it on, because all our modern day electronic equipment runs on all electronic equipment is always run on DC current. So we have to take the AC and turn it to DC.
Right.
When you went to your grandfather's house when you were a little kid, they had vacuum tubes. So that all the AC did is just heated a little filament in there, and it boiled these electrons up. So we created the DC in the tubes. So it didn't really crap up the power on the grid. But now we have transistors. We have switch mode power supplies. And so it chops up that sine wave and creates all these high frequency transients. So now we have to get rid of those. So that's why we have this issue. And so what you put on in your house is a problem. But let's just say you move into the house, you don't have a TV and a computer and all those things, and you don't have compact fluorescent lights. So you say, well, I should be fine. No, because the neighbors, whatever the neighbors do affects you. You can take that meter, for example, and plug it into your outlet in the kitchen, for example, and call up your neighbor and say, hey, vary your light dimmer switch. And when he does, you'll see the number, as he chops that sine wave, it's affecting you. The number will change. You will be able to tell him when he's at the dimmest, when he's at the brightest. So for the listeners, if they have light dimmer switches, for $2.50, they could probably get a good 20 amp switch and change it out. If they have to have the switch and they don't want to do that, at least if you're going to use it, turn it all the way up, because there's less chopping and there's less stuff put in line. So there's two sources. One is what you put on, one is what the neighbors put on. Now with smart meters, okay, that's a whole different subject, but there's two issues there. The smart meter has a transmitting circuit to transmit this stuff this information to the electric utilities. So we have to create some DC current for the transmitter. So we change the AC at the meter socket to DC, and most of them switch at 50 kilohertz. So even if you can have an opt-out and you're like out of the smart meter, you still got the problem of the 50 kilohertz from the neighbor coming in.
Wow.
So that's an issue. That's the bad news. Of course, the good news is you can put one of the filters in and it's going to get rid of the 50 kilohertz. It works real well there. But the second issue, of course, now you have this transmitted signal also from the meter. So it doesn't just go right to the antenna from the utility, it goes throughout the house. And if you have a refrigerator or some metallic surface, it hits that, it bounces off again. So people become very ill once those smart meters go in. So there's two issues there. So you have two, so we can fix part of it with the filter. That'll take care of the 50 kilohertz part. The second thing you got to do is you got to get some sort of reflective material or shielding material behind that meter socket, so when it hits it, it reflects it out away from the house.
Excellent.
Coming in the house.
Yeah, I mean, I have a client right now, and I'll go in and meter houses, and because it's part of what I do. I do lots of nerve work and get rid of pain. And people are coming in, and if they can't get out of their pain quick enough when they're just getting bombarded by these stressors. So we'll go in and meter with your meter, the Stetzer meter, and then we'll look at where those smart meters are in reference to their kids' beds. And we have one client who's literally right over their child's bed for her whole life, and she's just had countless health challenges, just tremendous. And just getting one of the sheaths on it, it's going to be the best thing that they ever did to help with their wellness. So, yeah, just unbelievable.
Yes, that's another. We used to import this material from Germany, and I think it's like $25 a foot or something. And it's like a cloth. It's a reflective material, and it works. I mean, it dampens it real well. But then we were doing some experimenting. We work with a company called Dolov. It's a #1 shielding company in the world, and they're doing a lot of shielding for embassies like in China and stuff for EMP and that. And they found a material, and it was originally made for reflecting heat. And it looks like tinfoil, like a regular aluminum foil, but then they put like a material in between that. They have the patent on that, and with a resin, and then they put another sheet of tinfoil on top, see? So what happens is you get like a sandwich, but in that material is something like $2 a foot. And so you can, and it's 4 feet high. So you can, for, $6, you have a 3 foot piece by 4 foot piece of material, and you can put that behind, and it's more robust. The material, the cloth, you can't use outside because it'll oxidize because of the carbon. So this stuff you can put behind the meter socket, and when it hits it, it will reflect it. It's really good. You can take it your cell phone in it and wrap it up and call your cell phone and it won't ring.
Wow.
It really does a good job, and it's inexpensive, but it's 2 steps. One is, and you can do that, but if you don't do the 50 kilohertz, you'll still be sick.
So she could basically put that sheath above her bed inside her house.
Yes.
On the other side of the meter, correct?
Yes, and when the meter is transmitting, it'll hit that material and it reflects it right back out. It's like a mirror, looking in a mirror.
Do we need a bigger, I mean, if her bed's a little lower, do we need one that just covers where her head would be?
Well, we need it down, depending on where her bedroom is, but we might need it to come all the way down to where the meter on the outside of the house is, so it would come down to a ground level or something like that, if that's where it is, just so that anywhere that energy that's being transmitted from that meter gets reflected out. But yes, that would take care of it. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I know you have your home, basically a home kit per se. Tell us about the home kit. Like, how many filters come with it? Does the shield come with it? And I'll just give us an idea of the suite of products that you offer at StetzeRelectric.com.
Okay, what we do is the average home in the United States has 2 televisions and 1 computer. Now, if you have 2 computers, 1 television, it's the same thing, okay? So it doesn't go by how many square foot or anything like that. It goes by how much electronics you have and how dirty it is in the neighborhood. So the average home has 3 big electronic devices. Like when I'm talking about your television, 2 TVs, I'm talking about the entertainment center. I'm talking about the TV, the VCR, the DVD, all that's one. Okay, so it usually takes 2 filters to take care of the TV. Put it on a power strip, 2 filters for the computer, okay? So that's 6 filters right there. So the average home in the United States takes 20 filters. Awesome. So we when we get them made, we have them boxed in boxes of 20. So yes, we give you a little better deal when you're buying the whole box, because the girls don't have to take them out and box them up and count them out individually or something. So you get a box of 20, and then we want to put in a meter. The meter normally sells for, I don't know, $100 and some, $125, and I think they give you the meter for like $50 or $75 or something like that. I'm not the money guy, but that information is not on our web. You have to call to get a better deal on that, but that's not a problem.
Yeah, we'll make it accessible. I think we're gonna do just that package home kit deal for everybody, so we can offer it to them.
Yeah, I'm not. That's my area of expertise. Isn't there? I stick with the technical part. But yes, and like if you get too many, send them back. That's not a problem.
And then the shield, the shield comes separately.
The shielding material you can buy, and I don't know the price for sure. I think it's like $2 or something a foot, and you can get as many feet as you want, and it's 4 feet high. So it really works good. I use it here because I have 2 smart meters on this particular building. At home, I had to build. My wife likes flowers, and we have a patio, and she's out on that patio and all kinds of flowers and things, and the meter socket's there. So I couldn't just reflect it out of my house. And I had a little problem because right behind the meter, if you went right straight through the wall, is the kitchen cupboards. Now, I'm not going to tear my cupboards out just to get a piece of material behind it. So what I had to do is take the meter socket off the wall, put this material behind it, and then I put it on all sides of my meter.
Okay.
So now, of course, the utility doesn't really receive the signal. So every month they have to send a guy out to open the door. I put a hinge door on it, and of course he puts his meter there, and it works, right? So the meter's working. So then he closes the door and goes back, and so once a month. So they should have just left the original meter, send the guy out once a month.
Well, this is so important to know and understand, you guys, because I've gone into homes, and this is like a new way of wellness. It's going into people's homes and really understanding the dynamics and makeup of what's causing people sick. And when there's just study after study on bioinitiative.org on once electricity hit our homes, everything went up, from cardiovascular challenges to diabetes to you name it, Alzheimer's. And now we're starting to see memory, suicide, fatigue, chronic diseases. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And heart arrhythmias. I mean, it's unbelievable. So when you can understand the makeup of your home and how it's wired, it's fantastic, because you can start to block these and shield them and harmonize them and ground these basically in a lot of different ways. So, and it's not just your own home, as Dave's saying, it's your neighbor. I've gone into a house where this lady had her kid's wall, and the head of her bed, their son's bed, was directly in line with their neighbor's smart meter. So we just moved the bed to the other wall and over a little bit, and the meter went down just tremendously to a more reasonable level. So it's not only knowing where yours is or where your neighbor's is, and you can use these shielding products to really deflect and block, and then the rest of the harmonizers and filters to clear out all that, all that other noise. So it's so important. So Dave, anything else you want to share with us before we end this talk?
Well, 1980s, a guy named Dr. Robert O. Becker, who was twice nominated for the Nobel Prize, said, "We are now being exposed to frequencies we've never been exposed to before. It is the cause of the made-up diseases of the 80s, right? Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, ADD, ADHD. And if you take all those symptoms and you look at the symptoms of radio wave sickness, they're the exact same thing." Now, this is an engineering problem. When we look at this, the switch mode power supplies, I mean, I don't want to give up my TV. I'm going to watch TV. We're talking on the computer right now. We're not going to give it up, right? So, but can we use it, and can we use it safely? The answer is yes. We should have went to the companies, the companies that manufacture this equipment. We know that if a company puts 16.6 kilohertz back on the line from their piece of their computer, they can make a tune filter for about less than $5 and put it in that computer and short it out, because they know that that's the one, but they don't. So that's why you're kind of stuck with this. But this is an engineering solution to an engineering problem. And it's not harmonizing, the word gets used wrong. It's actually shorting those frequencies out. The results are measurable with meters, and you can actually see it if you use an oscilloscope. So it's an engineering solution to an engineering problem, and it can be measured.
Awesome. You guys, look at StetzerElectric.com. Get those, shorting out those meters and those frequencies are just awesome. I love that. It's fantastic. Dave, thank you so much for going beyond with us and explaining all the differences in from electricity to dirty electricity to the microwave radio frequencies that we're experiencing, and then offering us a whole suite of solutions. We're so excited for it. And you guys, take a look. We're going to have links below. Get his products. They're game changers. There's going to be a whole new wave of people looking at homes and offices after this summit, and you're going to have the solutions right here. Dave, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right.